What's up, guys? Kool-Aid here, and today we're going to do 5 tips on how to be a better Conquest player. Now, similar to my 5 tips on how to be a better teammate, some of this is going to seem pretty elementary to you veteran players out there, but some of you, myself included, might get a little lazy from time to time. Might just flat out forget a few of these things. So maybe this will work sort of as a refresher course, or maybe you'll just pick something up from this. So anyways, let's get to it. My number one thing, and these are not going to be in any particular order, however, my number one thing on this list is going to be like the granddaddy of all tips or rules for Conquest, and that is always be on a capture point or always be on your way to the next capture point. I know PTFO is a pretty solid rule for any game mode, but for Conquest in particular, that's how you win these games. Now, there are going to be exceptions to the rule. There's exceptions to every rule, and a few examples for this. I mean, you're going to get caught up in gunfights on the way to objectives, and another perfect example of how you could deviate from this rule is if there's a mobile AA sitting on a field tearing up your air. Helping or taking out that AA is probably going to help your team just as much as capturing that point. So there are exceptions to the rule, like I said, but almost the entire round of Conquest, you're going to want to be moving from point to point, capturing them points, or defending them points. That's the number one thing. Number two, pick the right class for the map and the right class for your squad. For example, if you're playing Grand Bazaar, chances are you're going to do a much greater service to your team playing something like Assault, where you can revive and drop med packs, as opposed to something like an Engineer, because there's only 2 vehicles on the entire map per side. So, just keep stuff like that in mind. On the flip side of that, an Engineer is probably going to be a lot better for your team on a map like Caspian Border or any of the big air maps. You just gotta know what map you're playing and know what kit to pick for that map. Also, keep in mind and pay attention to what the rest of your squad is doing. Now, this is more important if you're actually playing with a squad that is going to stick together. A lot of the times that's not going to be the case unless you're playing with friends. So if you actually have a squad that you know is going to stick together, and say you're playing a map like Caspian Border and they're running 3 Engineers already, you might want to run Assault, so then you're the sole reviver. Having 1 reviver is going to be better than having that 4th Engineer. Another thing is you could play support to go along with those 3 Engineers, because chances are those 3 Engineers are going to be spamming rockets all over the place, and you're going to be racking up the points resupplying them rockets, because Engineers tear through ammo more than any other class. Number 3, you're going to need to adapt on the fly. Conquest probably presents more situations, more different situations than any other game mode I've ever played. I mean, pretty much everything Battlefield has to offer will come into play in Conquest. So you need to be able to adapt on the fly. And I'll use Grand Bazaar as an example again. Say you are playing Assault, and that 1 LAV on the other team, and this happens a lot, say that 1 LAV on the other team is just tearing your team up. Say you got a few Engineers back there repairing it, and your team just not doing nothing about it. Then maybe it's time for you to adapt, switch classes, switch to an Engineer or maybe a support, and take it upon yourself to take out that LAV. Even go a step further and say to your squad something. Say maybe, hey guys, we need to get rid of this LAV. Let's all switch to Engineer or support. Communicate like that. Another example would be if a helicopter is causing your team a lot of problems. You don't even have to switch kits necessarily. If you're already running Engineer and you're running an RPG or small, switch to an Eagle or Stinger. If somebody's running a Soulflam, switch to a Javelin. And take it 1 step further, you might want to switch to Recon. Tell your team that you're going to run a Soulflam, and that will actually encourage a lot of people to run Javelin if they know you're running a Soulflam. And in tandem, you guys can take care of a lot of helicopters, no problem actually, just working together. I mean, you can always switch kits right back once the situation's taken care of, and you just got to learn to adapt on the fly. That's actually a big time thing with Conquest, because it does present so many different situations. Number 4 is use your squad mates and spawn in the correct spot. And I put these two together because your squad mates are essentially three. If you're in a full squad, they are essentially three mobile spawn points that you have to use at any time. Now, if you're actually playing with your squad and you guys are capturing objectives together, I have a perfect example of something not to do. And I have this happen to me a lot, and this absolutely makes me pissed when this happens. Is, say me and one of my squad mates are capturing point C. Say we have A and B, we're capturing C, then they have E and D, whatever. We're fighting guys off at C. My squad mate dies. So I'm still there fighting guys off, trying to capture. Then, for seemingly no reason whatsoever, my squad mate will spawn somewhere else, somewhere completely random, back at A or B, back in deployment, instead of actually spawning on me to help me take that objective. So, be aware of that. I mean, if you know that your squad is capturing an objective, spawn on them and help them. You don't always have to be on your squad's ass, but in certain situations like the one I just described, there's no other place you should be spawning. I mean, that's the goal of the game, take objectives, and that's pretty much it. You should be spawning nowhere else but on your teammate or squad mate in that circumstance. Also, be aware of squad perks, stuff like that. I'm not going to tell you to be aware of reviving people, reviving your squad, drop ammo for your squad. You should be doing that for your entire team. I just wanted to throw the whole spawning thing in there because spawning is a giant part of Conquest. Knowing where to spawn and who to spawn on, that sort of thing, really plays a large role in the Conquest, so I wanted to get that in there specifically at number 4. My last tip, and this is actually 2 tips, but I don't care because I'm not changing the title, is use vehicles when you have to and spot. And let me explain the whole when you have to part. There's many circumstances where there will be an unmanned vehicle in the middle of a mess of people, enemies and friendly, and you don't want an enemy to get in that vehicle. This happens a lot on maps like Gulf of Oman, where vehicles spawn up all the time in the middle of objectives. You don't want to give that armor to an enemy team. You just don't want to do it. So at the very least, hop in there till a teammate can take it over, or even drive it to the next objective and bail once it's captured, something like that. But you just don't want to give armor to the enemy team when you have a chance to take it. I don't like to use vehicles very much. I'm not a big vehicle person, but you just simply can't give it to the other team when they shouldn't have it. Now, the other thing I mentioned was spotting, and this is probably the worst part of my game. I kind of get lazy when it comes to spotting a lot. However, I try to always make sure I spot vehicles, especially air vehicles. It's probably one of the greatest things you can do to help out your jets and helicopters in the sky is always keep the enemy jets and helicopters spotted. It really, really helps them a lot. And then also, when you're trying to put some RPGs and stuff into a tank, they're going to pop smoke, and it's a lot easier to see them when they got an orange triangle over them than when they don't. So just try to keep everything spotted. Infantry as well. I said it's one of the biggest, probably bad parts of my game that I need to work on. But it is very important, very crucial, and that's it. That's 5 or 6 tips that I have for you guys to try and be better at Conquest. And I'll say this again, Battlefield and Conquest especially offers many, many opportunities for lesser skilled players to really contribute, really help win, just as long as you're playing the game how it's supposed to be played. So that's all I got for you guys. As always, thanks for watching, and I will talk to you guys later.